Okay. Good morning. Back to the basics after after some high teachings. So let's begin with the prayers. While reciting the prayers, if you can imagine the Buddha in front of you, you can imagine the whole merit field, the refuge objects, and all beings surrounding you, taking refuge along with you.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one thus gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise, and I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyam. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Let's take a few more minutes to settle down and make sure we have a really good altruistic intention as our reason for being here. So first take a few minutes to settle yourself in the present. Be physically comfortable, relaxed, free of tension, and also let your mind settle down. Put aside thoughts of the past or the future, anything not related to what we're doing here right now. So we just had some really wonderful teachings from Yangten Rinpoche about the two kinds of bodhicitta, conventional and ultimate, which are the two wings we need in order to ascend the path to enlightenment, following in the footsteps of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and so that we can be of the greatest possible benefit to all sentient beings, including ourselves. But these two kinds of bodhicitta are advanced practices, and to develop them properly, we need to be firmly grounded in more basic practices, like those of the initial and middling levels of the Lamrim. And so in this class, we are now going through the initial level and are on the topic of karma, which explains how our actions of body, speech, and mind bring consequences, good and bad, that we will experience in the future. So see if you can imagine what it would be like to try to develop bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness without a good understanding of karma and a firm commitment to living in accordance with karma. And so, seeing how important it is to learn about karma and live our lives in accordance with karma, listen to these teachings with the motivation to be of benefit to all living beings, including yourself, both in a short-term way, while we're on the path to enlightenment, and in a long-term way, aiming for the attainment of full enlightenment, Buddhahood, so that we can help all beings in the best possible way. So I think we would all agree that even if we've heard teachings on karma before and have studied them, have meditated on them, and even taught them to others, it doesn't hurt to go through them again and again and again, because there's always something new that we can learn. And also reviewing them just strengthens whatever knowledge and understanding we already had. So we have been, we haven't had class for 2 weeks, I think. And before that, we were going through the 10 non-virtuous actions, as well as the 4 aspects of each action that make it complete or not complete. And so we've done the first 5, and today we'll start on number 6, harsh speech. And that's if you have the book, it's on the bottom of page 127. Okay, so the basis, which usually means like the object of the action. The basis of harsh speech is a sentient being who has become the causal basis of a hostile intent arising in you. So someone who, I guess causal basis means they're not the main cause, but a condition. The main cause is the seed of anger or hostility in our mind, and then this sentient being becomes a condition to trigger that attitude in our mind. So harsh speech usually happens because of anger, hatred, hostility, irritation, that sort of thing. And so it isn't an inanimate object. You know, we can generate hostile attitudes towards our computer or car or the sky or whatever, and speak harshly towards them, but that wouldn't be harsh speech. So it has to be a sentient being that can understand what we're saying. Okay, then next is the attitude, which has 3 parts: discernment, affliction, and motivation. Okay, so it says with respect to the attitude, the discernment, which means like your recognition, your identification of the object, and the mental affliction are as above. So discernment means we have to have a correct recognition that there is a sentient being and who it is. Like if we have the intention to speak harshly to person A, then, you know, that is the there's a correct discernment of that. And if we mistakenly speak harshly to person B, it's not a complete action. So there has to be a unmistaken recognition of who we're speaking harshly to. And then mental afflictions, so it could be any of the three poisons, attachment, aversion, ignorance. So it's most of the time, it's aversion or anger or hatred. That's what motivates harsh speech. But there could also be cases of doing it out of attachment. What would be an example of that? Attachment motivating harsh speech. Jason?
Maybe wanting to make money off of war, so, saying harsh speech to start conflict, to make money off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's... Deki?
Saying something mean to your loved one because they're not getting the right medical care that you think they should be getting.
Saying something mean to your loved one because they are not getting the right medical care?
Not pursuing.
Oh, pursuing.
Not pursuing that you think would be helpful for them to receive.
Yeah, so out of attachment to people, close friends, family, and so on, then, yeah, that can motivate harsh speech.
When the person who takes the last cookie.
What?
The person who takes the last cookie and you call them a selfish idiot.
Yeah, that's probably a combination of attachment and hostility, anger. Another example could be, Venerable Sangye.
If you're trying to get your own way in some situation and you're not really angry, but you speak harshly to the person to try to intimidate them, maybe, because maybe you're in the habit of doing that, and but your real motivation is that you want something out of it and you want a certain result, even if you don't really have an angry attitude towards them.
Yeah. Another example is wanting to be accepted by a group of people who have the habit of speaking harshly, like using all these nasty words, speaking nasty words, and you want to be accepted by and belong to that group of people. So then you adapt their way of talking. So it's not maybe so much because you feel this aversion and anger, but out of attachment to fitting in and being accepted by them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so, and ignorance. Ignorance of karma could be another motivating factor, just not aware that such language is harmful, is the cause of creating negative karma and experiencing suffering. You may think it's cool, oh, it's cool to talk like that.
That made me think of political correctness and how there's all this sensitivity around the words people say, and older generations, they have no problem rolling out slurs, and they're not even aware that it's like offending anyone.
Like the N-word.
Yeah, or other such things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, habit. Yeah, just out of habit. Okay, so different kinds of afflictions could motivate this way of speaking. And then the motivation is the wish to utter harsh speech. So you actually have the intention to speak that way. So then, yeah, it makes me wonder if someone uses certain words without awareness that they are harmful. hurtful, demeaning, and so on to others, then I don't know. I wonder if that is harsh speech. It's just your way of talking. But that would be ignorance, just a lack of awareness of the consequences of your behavior on others. Then performance. The performance consists in speaking unpleasantly, whether truthfully or falsely, about another person's faults associated with his lineage, meaning like family or, I don't know, race or caste or whatever, body, ethics, or behavior. So what we say may actually be true, but it's still hurtful. Like somebody has a big nose, just saying, you don't have to talk about their big nose, but, saying it, and especially if you have the wish to harm them, to hurt their feelings, then, yeah, even if it's true what you're saying, but, yeah, it's hurtful to the other person. And in volume 2, it gives additional examples of what constitutes harsh speech. Criticizing, insulting, ridiculing, maliciously teasing. You could also say bullying. Verbally abusing, angrily blaming, humiliating someone privately or in front of others. And I've also heard that it includes swearing, using those nasty words. But it's not mentioned in any of these sources. So, I mean, some cases of swearing happens privately, you're just by yourself. You're not necessarily directing those words to somebody else, you're just, that one. So that's probably not harsh speech, because it says the completion of the action consists in the one to whom it was said understanding the meaning. So it's not really complete unless there's someone who hears you and is like, you're directing those words at them, and they hear you and understand the meaning. So only then is it complete. And so, yeah, so if you're just by yourself, nobody's around to hear you, it wouldn't be complete, but it's still not a good idea, to engage in that kind of behavior, because then, one day there will be somebody around to hear you, and it can become harsh speech.
When we were talking about lying, we also included written material like internet, email, social media, newspaper.
Yeah.
And I know these are verbal non-virtues, but we communicate with each other so much non-verbally too. I just wonder, does that fall under this category, do you think?
Yeah, I asked Geshe Chudak about that, and he said, yeah, his understanding is all 4 of the verbal non-virtues can be committed through other means, like writing. So writing a letter, writing a book, writing an article, or these various electronic ways of writing and communicating. Yeah, so.
I was specifically wondering about nonverbal communication. They say that 80 or 90% of our communication happens nonverbally. So there's an expression that is conveying something very strongly, but the mouth's not moving, and yet there's communication going on.
Yeah, just like with the facial expression.
It could be facial, it
body
could be
language.
bodily.
Yeah.
Showing your displeasure about what someone's saying, or.
It's a good point. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's something to be aware of and avoid it as much as possible, but whether it would actually constitute one of these, verbal non-virtues or physical. I mean, if it's a physical thing, you're doing something with your body or with your face, it seems to be more a physical thing. But yeah, it's kind of maybe hard to find it within these 10. I mean, it said that, not all non-virtuous actions are included in these 10. These are like the main ones the Buddha pointed out we should try to become aware of and try to avoid. But there's lots of other non-virtues as well that are not included here. So I can't, I can't say for sure if that would be included in the, the 10 non-virtues or not, but it's close to that. So it's certainly something to try to be aware of and avoid. Okay, then number 7 is idle talk. So the basis of idle talk is a meaningless topic. It makes me kind of smile because, the topic might be meaningful. People who love to gossip, for them, that's really meaningful. But yeah, it's like, how do we define meaningless? This is from the point of view of the Buddhist view, the Dharma. And yeah, I'll read some things from volume 2 that are more specific kind of topics of idle talk. And then the attitude, among the 3 aspects belonging to the attitude, the discernment is stated merely as discerning that as that. In this context, it is to accurately discern the topic one wants to talk about and then talk about it. There is no need for someone to understand it. Okay, so it seems like for idle talk, it isn't necessary for there to be a recipient, a person hearing and understanding. The other verbal non-virtues do require that. And I was thinking too, with like animals, if you speak harshly to an animal, would they? I guess they get some understanding. Yeah, if you yell at an animal, even if they don't understand the words you're saying, but yeah, they they understand something, that you're angry at them, and it can be frightened, and so anyway, still better to avoid doing that, even to animals. Okay, so then so the discernment is you have an understanding of the topic you want to talk about and talk about it even if nobody's around. So talking to yourself, anyone do that? Well, it depends on the motivation, why you're doing it. So let's look at that. So to be full-fledged idle talk, then it needs to be motivated by one of the 3 poisons. So probably attachment. Attachment is, one of the main reasons or motivating factors, that we're just attached to what we're talking about, whether it's fashions or food or movies or music or people, celebrities, these kind of things. So there's a lot of attachment there to those objects and wanting to talk about them, get other people to talk with, to have a conversation. But it could also be anger, idle talk out of anger, like if we're, angry at a particular politician, for example, and we want to vent, our feelings, and the person did this and that, and isn't that terrible, and why don't they do da-da-da-da. So yeah, anger could also be a motivating factor. And then ignorance, just not realizing that this type of speech, this way of talking, is harmful. Leads to problems for yourself, for others, and so on. The motivation is the desire to express whatever random thoughts occur. Whatever pops out. Yeah, so going back to motivation, I've noticed when I'm in retreat, for a long period of time and I have nobody to talk to, and I talk to myself. And I mean, I don't know if my motivation is really one of the three poisons. It's partly just to keep my mood up, because it's kind of hard when you don't have some people to talk to stay positive and happy, yeah? I mean, it's hard for me, maybe not for Lama Tsongkhapa or, His Holiness, but so I find that, yeah, kind of talking to myself is a way of keeping my mood up, keeping me in a good state of mind. Also, to stay awake. Yeah, I discovered in one retreat, it was in Spain, and it was during the summer, and it was so hot. And my afternoon session, I just couldn't stay awake. I was just, nodding off, and it was so hard. And then I just started doing my meditations out loud. I'd be sitting there on my meditation seat. It was kind of like as if I was talking, teaching the Lamrim to an audience, but nobody was actually there, except for the spiders and the other creatures around. But yeah, so that was like talking to myself, but I don't think my motivation, I was just trying to stay awake and not fall asleep. And so I guess it's similar, like if you're reciting sutras or mantras out loud. Yeah, it's not a non-virtuous thing, even if there's no other human being around to hear you. So what other motivations might there be for talking to yourself that are not maybe one of the three poisons?
I find myself, if I'm not tracking myself as far as my behavior goes, I'll call myself on my behavior so that I'm actually giving myself counsel on what's going on. Like, what's going on here, or you're not paying attention, or, let's soften things up a little bit, or Samke, you're not, this is not the way you want to be behaving. I mean, it's really self-admonishment in a gentle sort of way, but talking to myself about my own behavior is really helpful for me, rather than dismissing it or concealing it or something like that, is to call myself on it not in a sharp way, but sometimes in a playful way, because I'm being so foolish, but other times just to really keep myself honest with myself.
It reminds me of that, I think it's Ben Kungyal, one of the Kadampa masters, who would, at the end of every day, would make piles of stones for good thoughts and bad thoughts, and then he'd scold himself if there were a lot of bad thoughts and congratulate himself if there were a lot of good thoughts. So it sounds like he was talking to himself, but in a Dharma way, to improve himself. Yeah.
I met a Vietnamese nun who was the only Vietnamese person studying at a university in Bengal, I think. And she said every morning she would talk to the plants in Vietnamese as a way to keep her spirits up and not feel so homesick.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Talking to plants. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they do say that, there could be spirits or devas living in plants. That's why we're supposed to not harm plants. And talking to animals and insects and birds and so on. Depends on what we're saying, of course, and how we're talking. But yeah, I find that I sometimes, accidentally startle one of the turkeys. I'm coming around a corner and a turkey's there, and like that. And then I'll speak in a very soft way. Don't be afraid. And I can see them visibly relaxing. It's like, oh, it's okay. I don't have to be scared. Yeah, so I think if it's done in a, caring, compassionate way, not in a harsh way, then I think it's okay. Okay, so then the performance consists in starting to utter idle talk. So volume 2 gives more examples of idle talk. gossiping, telling stories, joking without a good purpose, praying for terrible things to happen, wailing, teaching the Dharma to someone lacking interest or respect. Yeah, so even if we're talking Dharma, but the person doesn't really want to hear it, maybe gets turned off by it, then that is also idle talk. Reciting liturgies of other religions for no good reason. Repeating jingles and slogans. Listen to this one. Grumbling. Whoa. Bickering over meaningless things, who has to stir the peanut butter? You did it, I did it last time, you have to do it now. Talking about entertainment, sports, politics, crime, and so forth, without a good reason. So what would be a good reason for talking about these things? I was thinking when His Holiness teaches, he jokes, and I don't think it's for a bad reason. I think it's to make people comfortable, and then they'll be more receptive, more likely to listen when he's teaching the Dharma. And also when we're with our family and friends who are not Buddhist, or visitors who come to the Abbey who are not Buddhist, we talk to them in ways to make them at ease and feel comfortable and, feel that we are friendly people and not a bunch of weirdos. So, yeah, I think for those reasons, engaging in what may appear to be or sound like idle talk would be good reasons. Did someone else?
As Venerable has said, that looking at the news and looking at politics, sometimes being able to just sort of debrief or share with other people on how it's helpful to turn our minds into looking at it within a Dharma context rather than looking at it in the way it's being presented, to look at the long-term view, look at that as a form of dukkha, looking at as karma ripening, so that it puts this whole world in a different kind of view. And I find that it really helps me to integrate the Dharma much more purposefully in my life, since it helps to ease the mind and understand things a little better.
Yeah, it is important to know what's going on in the world, to know what people are going through. The Dalai Lama listens to BBC and reads newspapers and, keeps up with world events, so that, because he's in touch with so many people and wishes to benefit them. So he needs to know what they are going through, what's going on with them.
I remember Yangden Rinpoche said His Holiness has no idle talk.
Who said?
Yangden Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm.
That he doesn't engage in that, like it's whatever needs to be done and it's done, it's done.
But then when he meets, politicians or scientists, or, he will engage in kind of light conversation, but that it wouldn't be idle talk because it doesn't have that motivation of one of the three poisons. It's only out of compassion.
It seems like the useful criteria of, right speech? Truthful, useful, timely, and kind. So useful would make it not idle. Maybe also timely would be important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going through these 10 non-virtues are mainly focusing on the negative side of them. And Yeah, there isn't a lot of information when it comes to the 10 virtuous actions, at least in the Lamrim. They mainly just say, oh, if you avoid these 10 non-virtues, then that itself is creating virtue. But it is also good to look at the opposite to these, like wise and skillful speech. What is involved in that? We can do that later when we get to the 10 virtues. Okay, so then the completion is to finish uttering idle talk. So again, it's not necessary for anyone to hear us and understand us to be idle talk. Okay, so now the last three are non-virtues of mind, mental activities. First is called covetousness. The basis of covetousness is the wealth or property of someone else. So it kind of makes it sound like this is more material things, but I think it could also be beings like children, pets, partners. It isn't so specifically mentioned, but yeah, it's possible to covet someone else's child. Kidnapping happens. I don't know if it's always because of wanting to get a ransom, but oh, that kid's really cute. I want, I'm going to take them away with me. Or pets, animals, and partners. Yeah, wanting someone else's partner for yourself. But maybe traditionally those would be considered property. I think, yeah. So maybe that's included in property. We don't feel comfortable using that kind of term, but in a way it is my child, my pet, my partner. Something that belongs to another person. Okay, then attitude. Among the three aspects belonging to the attitude, the discernment consists in an accurate discernment of that basis. So that means we have to recognize that object or person does belong to someone else and not to me. And the mental affliction is any of the three poisons. So the main one is attachment, desire, wanting that. But it could also be anger, hostility. What would be an example of that? How could anger motivate covetousness?
Wanting to destroy someone else's happiness by taking away the source of their happiness, be it their partner or their child or their possessions.
Yeah. So an enemy or someone you don't like and want to harm. And you think, yeah, if I could deprive them of something valuable to them, that would make them suffer. It would probably be the greatest suffering. Tukje?
Excuse me. I was thinking of jealousy. The jealousy could create covetousness, and I was thinking a lot children.
Sorry?
Children, like they see another child get a task from the teacher, and then they want to do it, and so they're jealous, but they're coveting being able to do, be the line leader or whatnot. So, but jealousy, I thought, because it's within anger.
Yeah. Jealousy is kind of a combination of attachment and anger. And then ignorance, not understanding the disadvantages of this state of mind, not seeing anything wrong with it. That actually comes a little bit later with the completion. And then the motivation is the desire to make it one's own. So when you see this object belonging to someone else, there's, first thought or feeling is desire, attachment, I want it. And then that alone isn't covetousness. It's more than just having desire or attachment. You have to actually feed that and start thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had that? And then you start planning how to get it. So it's kind of a further development of desire or attachment. The performance consists in striving for the object of that thought. So again, it's just on the mental level. You may never do anything to try to get that object, but just indulging in those kinds of thoughts, wanting it and increasing that desire, and maybe starting to think about ways you can get it, plotting, planning, scheming, how you can get that object. And the completion is the thought, may this wealth and so forth be mine. So you actually decide, I'm going to go for it. And in the Lamrim Chenmo, the larger version of this book, it mentions 5 factors that also need to be present in order for the action of covetousness to be complete. And I'll just read them as they're explained in volume 2, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. So first is being very attached to your possessions. So you have a lot of attachment to your own things, your own possessions. You're very possessive about those. And then number 2, wanting to accumulate more. So you're also dissatisfied with what you have and always wanting more. Number 3, longing to examine and experience the possessions of others. Okay, so checking out, what other people have when you see what clothes they're wearing, what shoes they're wearing, you go to their house and see what they have, and you're really wanting to check all those things. And number 4, thinking that what another person has should be yours. Like, I have a right to that. I'm entitled to that. And then number 5, lacking integrity and not wanting to be free from the faults of covetousness. So there's no sense of this mental attitude being incorrect, being disadvantageous, and that's something to be given up. So just completely into this state of mind and wanting to follow it. Yeah, so again, just not, covetousness is more than just having the desire for something belonging to somebody else. One time, many years ago, I was at a retreat, and a friend came up and was really excited and showed me this mala that someone had just given them, and it was made of amber. And I love amber for some reason. And as soon as I saw this amber mala, I had this, I want it. And I was kind of shocked at that. But at least I recognized, that isn't an appropriate attitude. But it was so strong at that moment. So again, it's not enough just to have that kind of thought or that attitude, but you actually have to start feeding it and thinking, yeah, I really want to get that mala. What can I do? How can I do it? Maybe if I talk to them really sweetly, or do this, or give them that, or whatever. You're actually plotting how to get that and make it your own. And then having these 5 attitudes as well. So that's what makes it like full-blown covetousness. So Geshe Zopa says, the covetous mind has no sense of shame, which is another way of saying integrity, and that's many books translated as that. it doesn't recognize this attitude as wrong and has no thought of turning away from it. So there's no sense that this way of thinking, this way of being is incorrect and I should overcome it. And Geshe Zopa, so his commentary, this book, Steps on the Path to Enlightenment, is a commentary to the Lamrim Chenmo, the larger version of this text. And Geshe Zopa says, Lama Tsongkhapa wonders about the performance because this is a mental action, not an action of body and speech. So what does it mean to perform covetousness? And he says, it is just this process of going over and over your craving for the object until you make that decisive resolution, I will have it. So you actually have to decide, I'm going to make it mine. I'm going to do something to make that mine. This resolution, when it includes the 5 qualities, constitutes the actual action or the performance of covetousness. I guess Geshe Zopa also says it's best to keep away from desire-producing objects. Just try to avoid making contact with objects that could trigger this state of mind. And that's not always possible, but at least be very, very mindful when with those objects. So I'd like to read something else from his book. So again, this is from the Lamrim Chenmo. There are also incomplete forms of covetousness. 6 examples are given here. First, there is the thought, oh, how nice it would be if the master of the house became my servant and did my bidding. I guess that's if you were a servant yourself and you would like to trade places with the master, make him your servant. The second is thinking, how nice if his children, his wife, food, and all his possessions became mine. So I guess you could do that with a boss. Have covetousness towards what your boss has, or someone wealthier than you. Third is thinking, how nice it would be if I were known by others as someone with little attachment, who remains in solitude, is diligent, learned, and has a generous nature. Of course, if you actually possess these good qualities, there is no need to desire to be known to have them. A practitioner who truly has these virtues is free of worldly aspirations. In this thought, craving to be known as a pious person, the greedy, covetous mind is mixed with dharma. The person wants to be known to others as a good person, but he or she is really motivated by attachment, pride, and the worldly goal of having a good reputation. So that sounds like a virtuous thing. I want to be seen by others as a good person, having all these good qualities. But if their motivation is worldly dharmas, praise and reputation and not getting criticized and blamed and so on, then it's not completely pure. So of course it's good to have the aspiration to develop these good qualities, but not, based on ego, based on selfishness and worldly concerns. A fourth form of incomplete covetousness is the thought, how nice it would be if kings and captains and the fourfold retinue of the Buddha paid their respects to me, and if I had all the food and clothes I desired. So, wanting to be in these exalted positions where everyone is showing respect to you and you have all the things you want. So this is not covetousness, but it's a thought that's close to that, similar to that. And fifth is the thought, how nice it would be if I was reborn in the future as a deva and I could enjoy playing with the 5 sense pleasures. May I be reborn from the world of Shiva and Vishnu into the heaven of controlling others' emanations. These are different God realms. So wanting to be in the God realms and enjoying all the pleasures of the gods, the devas. The sixth and final example of an incomplete form of covetousness is when the desire arises for the possessions of parents, children, wives, servants, or the spiritual community. Just having desire to own the possessions of others. Thoughts such as these are included in the general term covetousness. However, the complete, fully developed karma of covetousness is what was described previously, and includes the 5 characteristics. So you have to have all 5 of those attitudes, as well as all the other aspects of the action in order to be complete. Also, to be a form of covetousness, each of these thoughts must be motivated by attachment or some other affliction. If your motivation is to be beneficial to others, if it is out of love, compassion, love, and mercy, such thoughts will not be covetousness. So, yeah, I think it's good to be clear that, covetousness is more than just having the wish to own something belonging to another, and has to have all those other factors along with it to be complete. But still, we do need to be on the lookout for desire and attachment, and also self-centeredness. Yeah, if that's involved in our wishes, then it's impure.
I had never been quite clear about this with covetousness in terms like the great American pastime of going to the mall and shopping and feeding or craving for things. And is that sort of acting out our covetousness, or it's for sale? Who's to say? I'm not getting this from somebody else, although I don't own it yet.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered where that plays.
Yeah, because here it's talking about possessions of another person, but things that are for sale in a shop or market or whatever, is that covetousness? I mean, in a way it is, because those things do belong to somebody else. They belong to the owner of the shop. So I think, it can be. So I didn't think about this recently, but in the past I thought, well, I think it depends on your need and your motivation. Yeah. I mean, if you already have, 10 pairs of shoes and you see another pair of shoes that really looks cool and you want them, but you don't really need them, then I think that would be covetousness. But if, on the other hand, you really need a new pair of shoes, you have only one, they're all falling apart and broken and hurting your feet and everything, then it's, you do need them. So seeing a pair of shoes in the shop and thinking, oh, I want to make those mine, I don't think that's covetousness. But you still have to check your motivation and make it a positive motivation. But yeah, now we have not just the mall, but we have the internet, Amazon, and ads appearing. You're trying to look at the news, and all these ads of things you don't want and need are appearing, unless you have ad blocker. But yeah, it's Venerable Sangye.
It says in the text here that the afflictions can be any of the 3 poisons, but it really seems like attachment can't be absent, because one way I've seen this presented is that this is just an attachment that we've cultivated right up to the point where we have decided to act. So even though ignorance can be in there, the ignorance of thinking this is what's going to make me happy or this is all right, or anger could be in there because so-and-so is going to feel so bad when they see what I have, you know, or jealousy or whatever. But it seems like the attachment has to be there, that this is essentially a cultivation of attachment to a dangerous degree.
Yeah, there's something in the Lamrim Chenmo, and it's actually from the Abhidharma Kosha by Vasubandhu. I was going to read it later, but it says that although I'm reading this from volume 2, although each of the 10 non-virtues can be initiated with any of the 3 poisons, killing, harsh words, and malice are completed exclusively with animosity. So even though your initial motivation might be something other than hatred, at the completion of the action, there will be hatred or animosity. And then stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, and coveting are completed with attachment. So what you're saying is right, that the initial motivation might be ignorance or hatred, but there will be attachment in there, and at the completion of the action, there will be attachment. And wrong views are completed with confusion or ignorance. Lying, divisive words, and idle talk may be completed with any of the 3 afflictions. So I was going to talk about that later, but since you brought it up. So has anyone else heard anything about shopping? What is Venerable? Has Venerable's talked about that?
Venerable has talked about that, and when she lists different things, usually she lists window shopping. Yeah, so, and I've wondered about that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not helpful for our mind if we're trying to overcome our attachment, our desire, and live simply, be contented with what we have, and so on, especially as monastics. But for anyone, in the practice of Dharma, we don't want to increase our desire, our attachment, because that's one of the main things that keeps us stuck in samsara. The Buddha said in his first teaching, the cause of suffering is craving. And there are other afflictions as well that keep us in samsara, but craving is one of the main ones. So we don't want to increase that if we want to get out of samsara and get to enlightenment. I don't know.
You had mentioned the 5th partial covetousness about wanting to be reborn in the God realm. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering how that's different from the initial scope practitioner motivation of wanting a good rebirth. Because that's virtuous and Dharma, and this is covetousness.
No, but the way it's said is wanting to go there and just enjoy yourself. And this is the God realm. These are desire realm, God realms, and there you have a lot of enjoyments. There's different God realms, okay, and the desire. There's some that are in the desire realm, part of the desire realm where we are, and there you have a lot of sense enjoyment. So it sounds like the motivation here is I want to go and enjoy all those sense pleasures that the gods have. So it's not really virtuous, it's just enjoying yourself. And yes, we do cultivate the wish to avoid unfortunate rebirths and achieve fortunate ones, but it's not just to enjoy ourselves, whether it's in the God realm or here. I want to be born in, a penthouse in New York City, to parents who are billionaires and have all these good experiences. That's not what we're trying to cultivate in the initial scope. We're trying to cultivate. Eventually, I want to get out of samsara and I want to get to enlightenment to help all sentient beings. But I do need to have fortunate rebirths along the way. But fortunate rebirths for the purpose of continuing our practice of Dharma and not just to indulge in sense pleasures. Yeah? No?
I mean, my understanding is that the initial scope motivation is before genuine renunciation and genuine bodhicitta. So
Not
that
in the context of Lamrim.
oh,
The context of Lamrim, the initial scope motivation, you have the ultimate goal of enlightenment all along, but you realize you need, I mean, there are those who only have initial scope motivation, but that's not really the Lamrim. That's outside of the Lamrim. I mean, in the context of the Lamrim, this is the path to enlightenment, to becoming a Buddha, to help all sentient beings. But you realize that, you know, to reach enlightenment, it's going to take a long time, and I need probably many lifetimes, and I have to make sure that in those lifetimes I'll have all the right conditions to continue practicing the Dharma. So it said, and in the context of the Lamrim, that this is the motivation in common with the initial scope motivation. So an initial scope motivation outside of the Lamrim would be, yeah, I just want to have a good rebirth. That's all they're thinking of. But in the context of the Lamrim, we don't think that way. We think my ultimate goal is enlightenment, but I do have to ensure I achieve fortunate rebirths in my future lives, and not just to indulge in sense pleasures, enjoyments, have a good time, but so that I can have the right conditions to continue following the path. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, I guess they say there's the initial level motivation, and then there's, in the context of the Lamrim, the motivation that's in common with that. So we, in studying this text, we are developing that one, the motivation that's in common with an initial. So if there's somebody who is only concerned about future lives and having a good time and not going any further, that's the initial scope motivation. That's the, well, I don't know, initial motivation, initial level of motivation. But what we are trying to do is develop something that's similar to that or in common with that, but not exactly like that. Does that make sense? I mean, I like the analogy of the train journey, so we get on a train, we're going to New York City, and the train stops in Chicago. So there's somebody who's on the train and they're only going to Chicago. And we're, on the same train, making the same journey as far as Chicago. But our goal, our destination is more than just going to Chicago, something like that. Does that make sense?
it does, but I'm still a little confused about if someone is really an initial scope practitioner and they have this desire to have a good rebirth, to enjoy themselves, let's say, my understanding is that is actually a Dharma motivation, and thus it wouldn't be covetousness.
Yeah, I guess I see what you're saying, because Dharma does say, like, the bottom line, the minimum to be Dharma is concern for future lives, not only this lifetime. So this person is concerned for future lives and wants to, have a good rebirth just to enjoy themselves. So yeah, in a way it is, but that is said, that is not actual covetousness. That's these 5 thoughts are not full-blown covetousness, but they are, what did he call them? Incomplete covetousness. So there is a desire involved. There is desire involved, but it's not a complete form of covetousness. I don't know. I mean, he's explaining, I didn't look at the Lamrim Chenmo itself, but this is based on the Lamrim Chenmo. So I think it was in the Lamrim Chenmo that these 6 thoughts were mentioned. Yeah.
It seems like the initial scope, motivation, the concern for future lives is more focused on the concern to avoid suffering in the future. Definitely it has, creating causes for certain, for wealth and stuff, but it's often expressed with an emphasis on avoiding the lower realms rather than this great desire for the sense pleasures of the future, of the higher realms.
Yeah. Yeah, but then on the other hand, if one is trying their best to create virtue, avoid non-virtue and create virtue, but then they hear about, the God realms and all the wonderful pleasures of the God realms, and then they start thinking, wow, I could do this and I could do that, and I really want that. It's feeding attachment. It's feeding desire and attachment. So that's not really ideal. I mean, I guess as long as you are creating the right causes, you're refraining from the 10 non-virtues and creating the 10 virtues and making offerings and, doing lots of good things, creating lots of good karma to have that rebirth. But it's still, pretty worldly. I don't know.
There was a monk, I believe his name was Nalanda, and he was very struggling with his practice because he was missing a village girl that he had been betrothed to. And the Buddha took him to a god realm where he saw all these beautiful goddesses and got him to strive towards practicing so that for a higher rebirth, and he forgot all about the village girl. But the other monastics were saying, what is this? He practices so that he can be with these nymphs. But they questioned it, but he shed that desire as he practiced, and then his desire became more pure.
Yeah, so it was just a temporary means. I thought there was another part to that story too, about hell. Yeah, Buddha created a vision of hell, but which one came first? Was it the God realm first or the hell? God realm came first, then the hell realm? God realm first, then the hell realm. Yeah, I don't remember that story. But anyway, yeah, Buddha used skillful means to tame that particular person. Yeah, I think he was strongly thinking of disrobing and going back home to be with his. I thought they were already married. Yeah. And what I remember too, after seeing these goddesses, these beautiful goddesses, he thought his wife looked like a monkey. In comparison, relative to these beautiful goddesses. Yeah. So he lost interest in her.
He didn't have renunciation in the first place.
Yeah, he was kind of reluctant.
Yeah, the Buddha called him to come.
Buddha kind of forced him. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's see if we can do another one. Harmful intent. So the basis, the discernment, and the mental affliction of harmful intent are the same as with harsh speech. Okay, so that means the basis would be a sentient being who's the causal basis of a hostile intent arising in you. And then the attitude, the discernment has to be unmistaken. You correctly identify who you want to harm. And mental affliction could be any of the three, but most probably anger or hatred. What could be an example of harmful intent motivated by attachment, by desire? If you are in love with somebody, attracted to somebody, and that person already has a partner or a spouse and you want to get rid of them, I mean, this happens all the time, right? Murdering or getting rid of that person so that you can have access to the person you desire.
There's a promotion coming up and you're in competition to the role with one of your colleagues. And so this is going to give you more money, it's going to give you more prestige. And so you really have intent to somehow defame them in some way so that it makes you shine a lot more brightly than they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And has to be very sneaky so you don't get caught defaming somebody, then you lose your job besides just getting a promotion. But there's this intent of how can I destroy, bring them down, or do something to where people see me as the better of the two choices.
So you can get what you want. And then ignorance, if you just have no awareness at all that this type of mental activity is harmful. You may have karmic imprints, a habit to think this way, and maybe that's fed by your conditioning, family, environment, and so on, feed this sort of mental attitude, and you're just totally unaware that it's actually creating suffering for yourself as well as for others, that this is something to be overcome. Motivation is the desire to hit someone and the like. That's just an example, but there's lots of other ways to harm. It is the thought, how nice it would be if this person were to be killed or imprisoned, or if his wealth were ruined by itself or by someone else, and the like. And so again, this is just mental activity. We may never actually carry it out, but to engage in that kind of thought, which I think we probably all have done at times, somebody we don't like, and our mind can come up with all kinds of thoughts of harming that person. And I remember reading about this man who was plotting to kill his wife and got into really detailed, or maybe even drawings or things on the computer, how he was going to do it, really elaborate plans. And I guess they found out, maybe they found, these plans that he had made, and he was brought to court, So there must be a law that could be applied in that kind of case, where he was planning to carry out this murder, even though he didn't actually do it. So, weird what people can do. And then the performance consists in actually engaging in this thought. And the completion is making the resolve to hit and the like. So you get to the point where you're definite, I'm going to do it. And then there are these 5 factors. So again, as with covetousness, it's not just having these thoughts, but you also have to have 5 additional factors. The first is animosity, supported by the strong projection of negative qualities on the cause of the harm. Okay, so your mind has really built up a case against this person that you want to harm, and seeing all these negative qualities that they have. Probably many of, this psychologist the Dalai Lama always talks about, who said, we see an enemy as 100% bad, but 90% of that is projected by our own mind. And the Dalai Lama said, that's what Nagarjuna says too. There's a lot of projection going on. And then 2, impatience with the one harming you. So it sounds like, you have received harm, or you think you've been harmed by that person, and you're not able to bear the harm. So you don't have patience with that. Then 3rd, resentment based on distorted attention to the cause of your anger. So you keep thinking again and again and again about what this person has done that you're so upset about. You can't let go of it. You're obsessed with it. Number 4, thinking how wonderful if this person were harmed or if they suffered. So, yeah, finding that wonderful, pleasurable if this person could experience suffering. And then 5, lacking integrity and not wanting to be free from the faults of harmful intent. So total absence of any sense that this mental activity is wrong, is faulty, and that you should give it up. And yeah, just indulging in it without any sense of wrongness. Okay, so those 5 have to be present as well for it to be full-blown, full-fledged harmful intent. So it's not just having anger and maybe thinking of harming somebody or wishing harm to happen to somebody, but it has to be a lot more than that. But still, noticing those kinds of thoughts is important so that we apply antidotes and resolve to overcome them. Let's see, we have time for one more wrong views, although this is a little complicated.
Venerable Khadro.
Yeah, maybe I should leave it. Yeah.
Can I,
Yeah.
What came into my mind with this one is road rage.
Is what?
Road rage.
Road rage.
When people are driving and they get irritated at somebody that's driving also, and then go through all of these same things and drive really reckless and,
Yeah, get back at them. Yeah, it's so easy to happen. Somebody harms me. And I guess too, in our society, our culture, there's often, support for taking revenge, and even a sense that if you don't take revenge, you're weak, you're wimpy, you're I don't know what, something wrong with you if you don't feel angry and want to get back at someone who's harmed you. So to take this kind of stance of being patient and not retaliating can be seen as, I remember, I think after 9/11, and there was all that kind of rhetoric about getting back at those bad guys, and I think some Buddhist had written an article, about patience, and I don't know, something, I don't remember, it was a long time ago. And then there was a lot of criticism, even from Buddhists. Even some Buddhists were criticizing that kind of approach of, practicing patience and compassion towards those who did that horrendous deed. So even among Buddhists, there may be that kind of attitude. It's not easy. Anybody else have? Put up.
Can you define integrity again? I don't remember the definition.
It's one of the virtuous mental factors, and in many books it's translated as sense of shame. But, in English, that doesn't necessarily sound so positive. So Venerable uses the term integrity, which I think is, it sounds more. So it involves refraining from doing something that's non-virtuous in consideration of yourself, meaning, for example, just thinking, I am a Buddhist, I'm a nun, I am a person who's trying to work on myself and trying to be a good person. That would not be suitable. It would not be suitable for me to do that. And it's usually paired with another virtuous mental factor, which is called consideration for others. And that is where you refrain from non-virtue, not out of a sense of personal integrity, but thinking about others, although it's more like, what would my teacher think? What would my parents think? In the face of others, like my teachers, my parents, people who I respect, it wouldn't be right for me to do that. They wouldn't be happy with me if I were to do that. So it's that. So those two mental factors are said to be really important for us to refrain from doing things that are non-virtuous, that are, not appropriate. It's a little tricky because it can almost sound like that other attitude of worldly concern, like wanting people to like me, wanting to have a good reputation, So it's, I think, fine line between those two. It's not just because I want people to like me and approve of me and, think I'm a great person, but yeah, it's a virtuous mental state. So it's just an awareness that this kind of behavior, like, harmful intent, indulging in hateful thoughts, harmful thoughts towards others, it's just not right for me to do. And also, if others, like my parents, my teacher, my fellow monastics, if they were to see these kind of thoughts in me, they would not approve. They would not be, so in the face of others, or with respect to others, there's that awareness. Does that make sense? Yeah. I have this thought that sometimes that, if we had a screen on our forehead that showed all the thoughts going through our mind, that would probably really stop us from many of the thoughts that we indulge in. Or we try to hide that screen. We can't, we don't have hair. Somebody who has hair could hide it, but for us, it's as we put our Zen over our head or put a hat on, but yeah. So
Or a hot mic.
Hot mic.
People get caught sometimes saying things off screen that they don't think is being taped. Politicians will make statements against their colleagues and whatever, but to have a mic on oneself, that we don't think that anybody's listening, but to have it be playing for everybody who's within ear striking distance knows what we're plotting and planning.
Mm. Okay, so we'll do wrong views next time. That's a little tricky. We didn't get very far today. 2 pages. But anyway, it's important to talk about these things because they're not always so clear, especially this text is a little brief, the explanation. Okay, so we'll stop there and dedicate the merit.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.